I think we have a right to say to the administration, look, you said credit crisis, we agreed, and we worked bipartisan. We changed your bill some, but it was still bipartisan. We then said, okay, but how about the broader economy? How about an economic stimulus? They said no. And so the House passed when it was filibustered in the Senate. Then the news got worse. So when we come back, November 17th, I think is the date, we're going to pass a bill. I know the House will do that. Policy Facts got a conference call later with a bunch of economists. It will have over $150 billion worth of economic recovery. That's 1% of GDP, and you guys will release that. More than we passed in October, in September, because things get worse. It'll have infrastructure money. Usually when you have infrastructure money, people say, oh, it takes too long. By the time you get to spend it, the economic recession will be over. But in this case, we're talking about communities that are ready to shut projects down. And we've got projects ready to go, and they got to delay them. We're also going to increase the federal share of Medicaid, which will free up state money so that the state doesn't have to cut things back.
As part of the stimulus?
As part of the, yeah. Third, increase in the duration of unemployment compensation. I don't know, an extra, I don't know how many weeks.
26 now, or 30?
Yeah, I will get you the exact number. It's what we usually do in a recession of this length. And finally, then food stamps. But also, the other piece we've been talking about, we did, which is, home heating assistance has been doubled for this current winter. But after that, also very likely some degree of tax relief, and not just a one-time rebate, but tax reductions for going forward for middle-income and working people. Now, my argument is, this is not the official position, yes, we'll do that now, because you can't worry about the deficit right now, but by a year from now, as we come out of this, then you will capture some of that money by raising upper income limits. And of course the other argument is you get out of Iraq. And something else I've said that's become very controversial. We cannot deal with a budget deficit with any kind of reasonable degree of social responsibility unless we begin some substantial reductions in the military budget. We've got a military budget that is. Now, the trouble is, as we come up on a new threat, we don't give her the old threat. We're still building Cold War weapons. We've got, the military budget is far beyond, and people say, well, we should be policing the world. I'm debating my Republican party yesterday. Charlie says, well, we should pull out of Afghanistan, we should pull out of Iraq, we should do this, and we should increase defense spending. Said, well, I agree, we should pull back, but what do we have to increase defense spending? He said, well, the Corps of Engineers was good, but there's a better way to deal with that. But that's, I do think that's the ultimate trade-off in my judgment is if we're going to deal with healthcare in this country, we can make healthcare more efficient. But it is going to cost some money to cover people who aren't covered. We found that in Massachusetts. There's no point pretending, at least over the short term. And the answer is we should reduce military spending and free up money to deal with the healthcare issue in a way that reduces the negatives on the economy. I'd like to weaken the job healthcare link because I think that's bad for the economy.
Would reducing the military budget, in your mind, include pulling out of Afghanistan?
No. I voted for Afghanistan, and I think we made a mistake. We have much, much more in Iraq than Afghanistan. If we pulled out of Iraq, you could increase Afghanistan some and still have a net saving. And the problem with Afghanistan is, frankly, because we have too few troops there, we've used too much air power. And there have been too many civilians killed, which is A, morally very depressing, and B, politically bad. No, I'm ready to, what I want to do is, I think that one of the things that just got the Soviet, the Russian military, yeah, they beat Georgia, but that's like, a major league team beats a high school team. Apparently, the report of their military prowess in Georgia was, it still stinks. They just overwhelmingly swarmed. And the Chinese are years and years away. I want us to be the strongest nation in the world. We don't have to be 4 times as strong as every other country in the world put together. We've still got Cold War weapons, we're building great new nuclear submarines. They don't have any enemy. That's a kind of a defect in a weapon. So I think we have greatly, and the thing is, we think Europe should be on its own right now. And so we would say, I think you have to increase in Afghanistan. We went in legitimate self-defense, and the Taliban are terrible people, and we want to see them take back. Although I think you need to do some economic stuff, but I do think the time has come to just, and not just pull out of Iraq, but if you've been reading this, I'm appalled, I've been busy with some of this other stuff, but the Iraqi government is under pressure to make America leave sooner by the Iraqi people, and we're insisting on staying. It's utterly bizarre. They say, that Maliki's got trouble getting this treaty ratified because It's not a non-treaty. You just want to write it right here. And people want us out of there. You know, they don't face an external enemy. So what are we doing? The other thing about Iraq, I'm just thinking the other day. I've had some friends who are very strongly pro-Israel, as I am, who were unhappy with me when I voted against the war in Iraq. From the standpoint of Israel, I cannot think of a country in the Middle East where the forces dedicated to the destruction of Israel have not been strengthened by our being in Iraq. The Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in the Palestinian territories, the radicals in Egypt, the Iranians. I mean, this has clearly had the most negative effect possible. One of the things that the war in Iraq did was to substantially elevate the influence of the most radical and destructive elements in every country in the Middle East.
Congressman, if I can go back to something you said, Europe should be on its own right now. Do you mean that militarily?
Yeah.
Do you see it projecting beyond into the economic thing? And how would we actually
Well, economically, that's very important. Militarily, it should be on its own. And we let them do too little, and they should be playing more of a role. And frankly, partly because we have, thanks to George Bush, America has become a very unpopular place. By the way, that didn't have to be. People said, always hate America. But people should go back to right after 2001, when there was just enormous popularity of America. Like, was it, in Figaro, the headline was, "Nous sommes tous Américains." We're all Americans. When we invaded Afghanistan, legitimately in self-defense, that was wildly popular in the world. I mean, we had genuine participatory support. We've now become so unpopular that when it comes to things like Zimbabwe or Darfur, where there is some intervention, military, I believe, in Darfur, not military in Zimbabwe, the Europeans want to take the lead. We have, George, until you get a President Obama who can build back some American credibility, we've lost the leverage there. The Europeans want to do it. But economically, no, they can't be on the line. What we need is this. We just go back briefly on the economic thing. A couple of things. First of all, we need an economic stimulus because the real economy is hurting. Secondly, we need to make this rescue plan work in an active way. And I was glad that, when Paulson brought up some of the capital on the banks, John Thain from Merrill Lynch said, we're not going to spend it. Pelosi called me and he said, what? I said, yeah, I can already get a call from Paulson. He said, yeah, I bowled them out privately. I said, well, no, it can't be private. You got to do it publicly. So we're going to push them to take that money and recirculate it. But beyond that, it's what do we do next year? The good news is, the crisis had two components. First of all, a lot of bad subprime loans. Secondly, and a lot of us saw that, what we didn't see, I didn't see it, a lot of people didn't, was the extent to which the modern financial system was so powerful that it was going to take those bad subprime loans and shoot them all over the world. It's almost like they were the bullets, but we had these most powerful, badly aimed guns that sent them all over the world. Now, thanks to what I just talked about with Bernanke, there will not be bad subprime loans in the future. We have put rules in that will stop that, and I think we'll finish up the legislative process next year.